Hello, I'm David Rutherford. Welcome to the Colorado Protectors podcast. On this episode of Colorado Protectors, we're going to be talking to a couple of leaders in the Colorado Fraternal Order of Police, FOP, about the services and benefits available to members of the Colorado FOP. If you are a member of the FOP in Colorado, you're going to want to listen and watch so that you get a good understanding of the benefits that you're entitled to. Our two guests today are Frank Gale and Mike Jackson. Frank is a former state president and a former national second vice president who has been in the FOP leadership for over 30 years. Mike is the current local lodge president of Denver Sheriff Lodge 27 and has been president there since 2006. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Can one or both of you kind of start with some basic information about the Fraternal Order of Police?
So I'll take that, Dave. So the Fraternal Order of Police is the oldest and largest law enforcement association in the country. Right now we have about 350,000 members, give or take, nationwide. We're also the biggest in the state of Colorado, where we have almost 9,000 members at this point. We are an organization whose real focus and the basic purpose of our organization is the advocacy of rank and file law enforcement officers. And so everything we do is really designed to do advocacy or provide services that are necessary for people who are working as law enforcement officers in this country right now. And so, I mean, that in a nutshell is kind of who we are.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things the FOP does for its members here in Colorado?
So in Colorado, and I'm really proud of our situation here, some of these things were, I created when I was state president. Some were created before I was state president. Some were created by my successor as a state president. But, every president I would say that we've had in Colorado has added something new and additional to the services that we're able to provide to our members. And so we're doing some things in Colorado that even other places in the country, the FOP is not doing. So first and foremost, the main reason that people will join the Fraternal Order of Police and the main benefit that you would enjoy that's the most important is our legal defense plan. You can't be a law enforcement officer in this country today without, at some point, going to have a lawyer. You're going to need legal advice, and you're going to need legal advice that's specific to the work that law enforcement officers do. So our legal defense plan does that. It's built specifically around how to help law enforcement officers deal with and negotiate through the processes of being accused of something, some act of misconduct or a complaint, or just being advised legally around kind of what their rights are in a situation where where management is investigating them for whatever might come up, whether it be an act of misconduct or whether it just be, a law violation or something like that. Mm-hmm. Our legal defense plan, I think, is unprecedented. I don't think anybody compares to it. There's no limit on the level of coverage you can have for a civil or a criminal matter or an administrative matter. Administrative matters being, where it's not a crime or you're not being sued civilly, but where, in fact, you've been accused of something. Maybe it's a routine, complaint around discourtesy or something like that, and the agency is going to conduct an investigation, and it's going to be an internal investigation inside that agency, and potentially you could be looking at some disciplinary action as a result of that investigation. So administrative cases are the most common for officers to come up against in law enforcement work today. So most of the resources really end up being devoted to that kind of work. But the resources are equal across the board for all three functions: administrative, civil, or criminal, and they're unlimited. If in criminal cases, and we've seen officers, recently, and even in the past couple of decades, where they were involved in some kind of a critical incident, officer-involved shooting, or maybe it was a vehicular accident or something like that, and they're charged with a crime and they got to go to trial to prove themselves innocent. This can be very expensive. Criminal trials are going to be, 50, 100,000, 150,000. Some of them have gone as much as over $1 million worth of coverage, depending on the circumstances. We cover that. The officer never pays a penny for it, ever. They don't pay anything for it. So, all they do is contact the attorney, and then the attorney starts working on it, and then the attorney bills the legal defense plan for the Colorado FOP, and then we pay those bills. So that's the I would think probably the main thing that people get. We also have an off-duty legal plan because some things are not covered through our legal defense plan that don't relate to your official duties. Under our regular legal defense plan, we call that the color of your authority. So when you're working, you're at work, and you're performing some official act, or you're involved in the performance of an official act, that's going to be covered by the regular legal defense plan. The off-duty legal defense plan would cover things that are not related to that, even though your agency may still be investigating you, and you may still be at risk of some administrative discipline because of it. Like, for example, you get into a dispute with your neighbor, and the neighbor knows you're a cop, so they file a complaint with your agency. So that wouldn't be covered by the regular legal defense plan because it doesn't really involve you taking some official action, but it would be covered by our off-duty legal plan. And so we also have that, and that's a good benefit. It covers a lot of different aspects that officers would need to have that don't really deal with their work. And it's an optional plan. Either local lodges as a whole will buy into that plan, or individual members can buy it for $15 a month. And so it's that one is optional. Most I'd say a good portion of local lodges are now buying into it as a whole. We have also the Labor Council. Colorado FOP Labor Council is an organization that's designed to do what would typically be considered traditional union representation. We negotiate collective bargaining agreements, file grievances, do contract administration for organizations and agencies and local FOP lodges that have collective bargaining rights. But we also do things for members that do not enjoy collective bargaining rights. And so a lot of our members that are in the Labor Council, in fact, the majority of our members don't enjoy bargaining rights at this point. So we will look at things like Fair Labor Standards Act. We'll also look at state labor law. We'll look at your internal policies in a given agency and determine things like are they paying you overtime properly? Are they applying appropriate interpretation around holidays or things like that? And so when you have a collective bargaining agreement, it's actually easier because you just refer to the document, the collective bargaining agreement, and that tells you how all these things are done. But when you don't have that, we have to look at a lot of different places. And like a lot of things that happens with law enforcement officers, you got to have legal advice. You got to have a lawyer, an employment attorney, a labor law attorney, be able to review those things and provide analysis and be able to interact with members around their questions. So that's what the Labor Council does. Only entire lodges can come into the Labor Council. Individual members can't purchase it. So a lot of individual lodges, I'd say probably more than half of the individual lodges in the state right now participate in the Labor Council. So they can provide these labor services to their members. In addition to that, we have a foundation called the Colorado Police Officers Foundation. Colorado Police Officers Foundation was really designed to do a lot of charitable and benevolent things that don't just benefit communities and regular people, but they benefit officers and their families. Obviously, if there's an officer killed in line of duty, we have a mechanism to where we can put together a fundraiser to try to assist that officer. Same thing happens with officers who are injured or permanently disabled. We're able to do that. One of the main things that we do with the Carl Police Officers Foundation that's really good for the communities. We have a child ID program. We've operated this child ID program for over 30 years. Foundation pays for it all. There's no cost. We bring it out to events, and parents love it. And then probably our signature item that we're doing with the foundation right now deals with emotional wellness. Officers who have experienced emotional trauma on the job, because it's a tough job, and you see a lot of things, you experience a lot of things, may need counseling services. A lot of times they would prefer to use our counseling services than their agency's counseling services, mainly for reasons of confidentiality. Sometimes members think, I don't want to have to deal with someone from the department and explain what's going on with myself, or maybe something that's going on with my marriage or my relationship. And they can come to us, and we cover that through our foundation. And we have services and counselors and therapists that are culturally competent. These are people who are either former law enforcement officers or former first responders, or they are people who have worked exclusively with first responders in the past. And then we do legislative advocacy as well. At the FOP at all levels, the national FOP does legislative advocacy in the Congress, and they do a lot of it. And they've been mentioned in many publications as being one of the top 10 most influential lobbying organizations in the country. We do that at the state level too in Colorado. We do it in our legislature, and we have a lobbyist that we use, a lobbying firm that we use to help us with that, because most of us are people who are still working full time as law enforcement officers, and people that are not still working, like me. I'm retired. Our life and our expertise is not in those things, and so we may be able to contribute in some way, but we need to have, again, professionals to provide these services. So these are the things that we provide as to be a member of the Fraternal Order of Police.
Now, you talked a little bit about the off-duty plan and gave a couple of examples. Are there other areas that might benefit?
Sure. I mean, one of the things that we do with the off-duty plan is we have wills and estates. So and officers should have a will. I mean, the reasons are obvious, but a lot of them don't. Mm-hmm. And in my career as a law enforcement officer and a law enforcement manager, and then subsequently as an FOP leader, I knew a lot of people who were killed in line of duty, and you would be amazed how many officers don't have a will. And then we end up, local lodges would end up having to try to assist in some way to help them through probate. And some lodges don't have those resources. They don't have the ability to do that. But we provide them with a will free of charge. If they are a member of the off-duty plan, legal plan, then they can go see an attorney and they can get a will set up, and all those things will be taken care of. Typically the cost of something like that be anywhere between $1,500 and $3,000, depending on the complexities involved. And we're if you're a member of the off-duty legal plan, we're doing that for free.
Outstanding. Mike, you're president of the Denver Sheriff Lodge 27. Does your lodge participate in these programs, and how does that work?
Yeah, actually, we're considered an all-in lodge. So our lodge is so our members will get the legal defense, they get the non-duty legal, and they also we're part of the Labor Council. So our dues that they pay will cover all of those services that are provided by the state.
So you, in the Denver Sheriff Lodge, decided to participate in all of those services for your members. And why did you decide to do that?
Well, it was something that we needed, especially with the legal defense. Denver Sheriff deputies are always under scrutiny in the city of Denver. And we have an independent monitor's office that's been a little overzealously citing over our agency for the past 8 years. So every little complaint, non-complaint, because a lot of our complaints now come from the independent monitor with the addition to our body cameras. So we get a lot of complaints from the independent monitor's office that requires our deputies to have to go in for administrative review. and they have an investigation on some kind of policy violation or something like that. So we send them in with an attorney for each of those cases.
Has the implementation of the body cameras made a big difference in what you guys do?
You know, it hasn't made a big difference on what we do, but it has been a big effect on how everything is looked at on incidents within our facilities and in our assignments. So one of the biggest issues right now is the timing of when you turn your body cam on. A lot of problems with that. The independent monitor's office believes that we should be turning the cameras on earlier, but there's a policy that we're also following. Our deputies work an extensive amount of time every day. We are working an average of 14 to 16-hour days. And when you have your camera on, the cameras only last for about 10 hours. So there's a lot of problems with the time of how long you have your camera on for the day, and then as much video time as you have to do. After you do any video, you have to record that into the system that they have. So you have to download it. You have to write a small report with it to go with any time you use it. So it's a little bit more cumbersome in that aspect, but it's not really a problem for deputies. It's just that it adds a lot more time that they have to, put into making sure everything is logged in, and you have the proper login number, and you have the proper everything has to be connected to the reports and all that.
Right.
So it's a lot of it adds to computer time. So
right, and then just managing batteries
yes,
and everything else.
and trying to make sure that it's working.
Yes,
That's the most important part.
absolutely. Frank, so all members of the FOP have the benefit of these programs and the protections that they offer?
So these programs are available to all members. Some of them, the lodge has to opt in to do, and some of them individual members can opt into, like the off-duty legal plan, the non-duty plan. Individual members can get that whether their lodge does it for them or not. However, if it's the labor council, the lodge has to join as a whole to do it. But as far as the legislative services go, and the services we provide through the foundation, that's available to all members. And the legal defense plan is available to all members. That's the regular legal defense plan is again something that the lodge has to opt into as a whole. But of all the lodges we have here, and I think we're up to about 65 local lodges in the state, and local lodges can be more than one agency in a local lodge. So, but I think we're up to about 65 or 63 local lodges throughout the state. I think there's only one currently not participating in the legal defense plan. So generally, when people come into the FOP, lodges, get established and created in a particular area or a department or an agency, the main thing they want is that. So for the most part, yeah, the regular legal defense plan is just an automatic because people who join us, that's usually the number one thing they're seeking. The legislative work, that's going to happen because we're doing that legislative advocacy at the state and the national level. And also, just the general fraternalism, the connection with other law enforcement officers. We have events and activities, and we have communication amongst law enforcement officers throughout the state and the country.
Cool. So what happens to when a member of the FOP is either not participate in that or in one of these programs?
Well, if they're not participating and they need those services, then they're in a bad way. That's the reality. I mean, these plans are designed. A lot of them, like the legal defense plan, the off-duty legal plan, the labor council. They're like insurance plans in the aspect that. If you have an accident on Monday, you can't call an insurance provider on Tuesday to get coverage for Monday. It doesn't work that way. So it's important that members know what they're participating in. And I think some of the confusion we get often, and I get lots of questions from people who are members of the FOP who think, hey, I'm a member of the off-duty legal plan, and they're not, because they didn't join individually and their lodge didn't enroll en masse into the plan. And sometimes members think that that is what happened. And so you need to make sure, if you're a member, you should contact your local leadership and you should ask those questions. Hey, are we part of the off-duty legal plan? Hey, are we part of the labor council? Are we participating in all of these different aspects? Even are we part of the legal defense plan? And like I said, I think there's only one lodge that isn't, and I don't know that their members necessarily know that they're not, but they may. So, but that's what happens. Yeah, if you are not part of the legal defense plan, and you get an IA case, you catch a complaint or something like that, you're on your own. If you're not part of the off-duty plan and you have something that would be covered by that, you're not going to get coverage.
And those legal fees could be significant.
Yes, definitely. And so, typically, the average administrative disciplinary case for an officer, regardless of whether they're disciplined or they're exonerated, usually goes somewhere around $15,000 worth of legal expenses. If you have a critical incident where you're involved in, a death in custody or an officer-involved shooting, those expenses could be significant. And one of the things that's going to happen, no matter what, you can be right when you shoot a suspect, defending your life, defending the lives of other people. You're probably going to get sued. Okay, that's probably going to happen. And so oftentimes it's important for you to know and understand that if you get sued, that the agency will do certain things in defense of you in that case if you've been exonerated, if they've ruled it a good shooting. But oftentimes there may be conflicts between who's ever representing the agency and the interest of the jurisdiction, the city, the county, the state, and you. And that's where our attorneys come in. You'll get your own attorney just to make sure that your interests are being looked after.
So, Mike, I imagine that these are the issues, that Frank's been talking about that are the driving reasons behind why Lodge 27 provides that complete and comprehensive coverage to your members.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we need every bit of, and the thing is, it's like you said, there's a lot of deputies don't realize the importance of this. We try to emphasize this when they're coming out of the academy. We go in and talk with them, and we tell them that this is the kind of insurance you gotta have, because you don't know what's going to happen. It doesn't matter if you're guilty or if you're not guilty. You could just be there, and your face was on a camera. You had an incident that happened, and they see your face on there, and next thing you know, you're under investigation for something, or you're a witness to something. So it's always important to have that kind of as we call insurance from just in case.
Yeah,
and that's
well,
all
I
it
think
is.
some of the recent court cases are certainly proof of that.
Yes, that is correct.
And so, Frank, you talked about it a little bit about the work the FOP does with the Colorado legislature. Could you expand on that?
Yes, I mean, so every year, every legislative session in Colorado, there are things and bills and prospective bills and committees and so forth that are going on that involve public safety and law enforcement. Now, that's not all the legislature is doing. Obviously, they're busy with lots of different things that deal with how the state's going to operate and the things that are happening in the state. But we pay attention to things that specifically involve first responders and specifically involve public safety and law enforcement. And sometimes those things deal with, compensation issues or retirement. And so we need to be there to make sure that we are advocating on behalf of our members in a way that makes sure that those things are preserved for them or enhanced for them. But oftentimes, and what we've seen a lot of over the last several years, is you will have some elected officials who believe that there's a need and a drive to do what they're calling law enforcement reform. And the term reform, it insinuates that something's wrong, that something's broken. And if something's broken, let's talk about it. Let's figure out a way to deal with it. But oftentimes we're not really getting that. There's some agenda by some of these people who are elected to paint law enforcement officers in a way that makes it seem like law enforcement and law enforcement systems are broken. And that always seems to be borne on the backs of rank and file people, not so much management people. Although management people, and I was in management when I finished my career in law enforcement. I was high level management, but the rank and file people seem to bear the brunt of it when they pass a law that's designed to quote unquote reform some aspect. It always tends to be something that has a negative impact on the way rank and file officers are able to perform their jobs. And as you've heard from some of the things that Mike's talking about, there's a higher level of scrutiny in law enforcement. So we're doing that work at the legislature. We're trying to enter into dialogues with people who want to change things or who want to do reform. Some of these things are needed. Sometimes we do need to change the way business is being conducted in the law enforcement profession. And when that happens, we're generally on board with it. But we want to help craft that legislation. We want to help craft good public policy. And we think we're uniquely suited to do that because we're the people that are the ones that are going to be carrying out on a day-to-day basis, that are going to be actually performing these functions. So that's a big part of what we're doing. Because we're not professional lobbyists, because we're just people whose career is law enforcement, we have a lobbying firm that we hire that's worked with us for several years, and they give us the access. They get us access to the people that we need to talk to. They also meet with those people, and they talk about the things that are important for us and how those things happen. And so oftentimes we're able to start with the idea that you have a particular legislator wants to work on, and then we're able to put together some kind of a working group or a committee, or we're able to just have some dialogue one-on-one with that legislator and provide our perspective. And it's important that we do these things. So this is, and it's when the legislative session is on, we have people every day that are in the legislature doing that work.
So it sounds like you spend a lot of times working with legislators to craft good bills, but you also work with them to prevent the passage of bad bills.
Well, absolutely. We actually spend more time stopping bad legislation. We spend a lot more time and effort on bad legislation. And the reason for that is I think sometimes you have people who are elected officials and they're well-meaning, and they come up with an issue or a prospect to say, we should have a law that does this, and they start working on it. And then when we get involved, we explain why what they're talking about really isn't going to work, or how this could be enhanced and done in a way that's better and more efficient and more effective. And so that's what we do more than anything else. So a lot of times, the idea starts out as something that might be well-meaning, but it's, the devil's in the details, and that's how it's always going to be. So yeah, we try to pass, legislation that's positive. We'll be in the legislature advocating for things like a Bill of Rights or administrative due process or universal collective bargaining rights. We'll be talking about those things. We'll also be talking about things that deal with the way enforcement actions occur. How do we enforce this law, or how this activity should be codified as illegal, and here's how the processes should work around that. And we'll do those things too, because we're uniquely suited to understand how this is impacting communities. But this is the work that we do with the legislature, and it's important that we stay engaged and we stay on top of things, because a bill could get introduced today, and in just a couple of 3 weeks, it could be law, just because no one bothered to engage with it. And in fact, there's other competing law enforcement associations and competing associations and groups that may talk about doing this, but very honestly, aside from organizations that are representing management people like the sheriffs or the chiefs, there's really no rank and file law enforcement group down there except for us.
So is it also a matter of educating the legislators to the concerns and processes unique to law enforcement?
Definitely. That's a big part of what we do. And it's one of the reasons why, people who are in the elected leadership of the Colorado FOP and even local leaders, it's important for them to interact with legislators. Locals should be interacting with legislators that are elected from their local areas, and we encourage that, and we show them how to do it. Mm-hmm. We teach local leaders how to do that. At the state level, we interact with legislators and the governor, other statewide elected leaders, attorney general, and try to talk about, hey, these are the things that we think you should know about, or here's the perspective that we would like you to understand.
Right, Mike. Do local lodges like 27 do any work working with the legislator?
Well, basically,
legislature, I should say. Sorry.
Kind of our thing is basically with city council and the mayor's office. We deal with. They have a public safety director that we talk to quarterly, but we try to get the city council people to kind of know us by face. So if they have an issue or something comes up about the sheriff's department, we want them to contact us to get our side of the our side or our look on the policy or something they want to change or they want to add into our agency. And we just feel that it's important to be there for them, to at least give them a inside look on how we see things happening in our agency. So we do contact them and talk to them, and so it's just an important part of the process. If you're going to represent your membership, you got to go outside the box a little bit. It can't just be us talking to each other, talking about all the problems. We'll never get anything solved that way. So we have to get outside and to actually talk with our sheriff and our public safety director and our city council. So, and any community groups, we deal with community groups also.
You both have talked about the importance of creating relationships with legislators, whether they're local or at the state level. How do you do that?
It's actually getting out there and just talking to people, reaching out to Ministerial Alliance or NAACP, letting them know, hey, let's have a meeting on this issue, or if there's something coming up, hey, this is something they've been talking about in the state or something they've been talking about in the city council about a change, and we think you should know something. So we reach out, and we've had the relationships for quite a while now. So it's not something that's new. It's been out there for quite a while. If it's Latino Forum or whatever group it is, we pretty much have a decent relationship where we can at least talk with any of these community groups.
Well, and one of the things we do at the state level, and we try to help locals do this as well. We do actually help locals, but whether they do it or not is really up to the elected local leadership in the lodge. Is you build those relationships oftentimes on the campaign trail when people are seeking public office. They are going to be campaigning. They're going to be out there campaigning for election. It's important for everyone who's involved in the FOP, but certainly we do this at the state level, to meet with and engage with candidates. And that starts the relationship. We'll talk to them. We often have a questionnaire that we'll provide them, and they can answer the questions and provide it back, and it tells us, how they feel about some of these important issues to our members. And then we will meet with them. We will make decisions on whether we want to endorse certain candidates and provide a financial donation to their campaign or not. And locals can do that with city council races and town council races and county commissioner races. And we try to encourage locals to do that, and we try to provide them assistance in doing it. But we certainly do that at the state level, and we engage with people who are running for state level offices, whether it be the legislature or the attorney general or the governor's office or the secretary of state or state treasurer, whoever. That's the way you build a relationship, because now you've met these people and they've met you, and you kind of have an understanding of who each person is. And then, once they get elected, then you continue to schedule meetings. Even if you don't have anything necessarily pressing to deal with, you schedule meetings or you invite them to events that the organization is doing so that they can come out and interact with members.
And it's like any other relationship. It's not a one-time thing, just calling them up. It's a matter of developing a relationship over time.
That's right. That's right.
So how do FOP members get more information about the things we've talked about, or if they have questions about what coverages they have or that they could have?
So the first step I would say is contact your local FOP leadership. The thing about the FOP that I think is different than a lot of national organizations and national employee organizations is we're not run from the top down. It's really a bottoms up organization. And so the locals kind of dictate what they need from the state and the national level. And we build a framework around that, and we say this is what the FOP is and this is how it should operate. But what we do for locals and how locals serve their members is really dependent upon them. So I'd say start with your local leadership. Find out who your local president is, your local secretary. Engage with those people. Reach out and ask questions. You can always also just go to our website. This is probably the easiest way, is just go to coloradofop.org, and you can see what's going on in Colorado FOP. Everything we've talked about here is on the website somewhere, and just look around the website. And there's also phone numbers and email addresses on the website. And I'll say this, if someone just, has a question, I've been doing FOP leadership for a long time. Frank Gale or fgale at fop.org. fgale at fop.org. fgale at fop.org. If you send me an email, I will respond and answer your question, or I will get you to the person that can.
What was that email again?
fgale at coloradofop.org.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time. Is there anything else that either of you would like to pass on that perhaps we haven't talked about?
Well, yeah, it's kind of the Labor Council piece. I think the Labor Council piece is really important for especially our members. When you're talking about any problems that have to deal with policies in your agency, you can always get somebody from the Labor Council come in and help you through that process. Pay and benefits is another thing. Time off, whether it's sick time, vacation time, bereavement time, all the different times that you can also dealing with injury on the job stuff, because we have a lot of injury on the job issues, trying to get the people support for that. And I think that's the biggest for the, and of course, collective bargaining too. We do the contract through the Labor Council, so that's always nice. But the best part about that is that these guys are working with other agencies, not only just in Denver, but in different parts of the state of Colorado and in other states. So they kind of have an idea of, and it's good to have somebody who can bring in kind of a different perspective, like, well, this is this is something that's kind of similar to what they're doing in Kansas or something, and this is how they do theirs. Maybe we can work something into how it will work for our agency. So it's always important to have that, where you have somebody who has a little bit more worldly knowledge on basically your benefits, your pay and benefits. So that helps out a ton. So.
The only thing I would say is, just definitely go to our website, coloradofop.org, and look at what we're doing. If you want to see the work that's being done by the Colorado Police Officers Foundation, our foundation, that's coloradopolicefoundation.org. And the phone number to the office, I'll put that out there in case somebody wants to call the office, 303-426-1733. That's the Colorado State offices.
Please
And
leave a message if nobody answers.
if nobody answers, just leave a message.
We always
and
get back.
Somebody will get back with you, definitely. FGALE@coloradofop.org. And if you got a question, I'll answer it, or I'll get you to the person who can.
And bottom line, if you don't know what your coverage is or what programs you're a part of, ask.
That's right. Ask.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for joining us today, and thank everyone who's listening and viewing. We will see you soon on another episode of Colorado Protectors.